Shea Islam here.
So welcome everyone to our afternoon session on connecting returning citizens to employment resources. Many of you joined us this morning for the first webinar in this two-part Justice Systems Reentry VR mini conference that we're doing today. For those of you that are rejoining us, welcome back. For those of you that are just coming on this afternoon or late afternoon, welcome. A couple of items before we get started. My name is Terry Donovan. I'm with the Stout Vocational Rehabilitation Institute. Joining me today from Stout to help with managing the webinar, Heidi Decker-Maurer and Beth Gertner. Heidi will be managing the chat function, and I'll make a note. We've noticed a little bit at webinars. If you have a chat, if you have a comment that you would like the rest of the attendees to take a look at, you're sharing a resource that's occurring in your state, activities, maybe some statistics you'd like participants from around the country to know about. Make sure when you fill out your chat to look to see that you send it to panelists and attendees. If you just have a note for a panelist, then just click on panelist and it'll just come to the 4 of us, 5 of us. So just a reminder there. For those of you that have been with us before, we offer 1 CRC credit for our webinars. At the end of the session, Beth, who is going to facilitate the question and answers, she'll tell you a little bit more about the CRC. And in relation to question and answer, Beth will be facilitating that. Please put your questions in the Q&A box as Kimberly and Randy go through their presentation. You can also add them as we get to the Q&A. We will not be taking any questions, or let me say, we won't be answering any questions during the presentation, and we then will start the live Q&A with Randy and Kimberly when they conclude their presentation. Let's see, I can't think that there's too much else. So with that, I will turn it over to Randy and Kimberly for this afternoon session. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Randy and I would like to welcome you to this afternoon session, Connecting Returning Citizens to Employment Resources. Oh, your PowerPoint.
Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. Sorry, that's right.
I just realized it wasn't up.
Hold on one moment, and I will share the screen. There we go.
There we go. So this is by Project D3, Educate, Empower, and Employ. So the next slide. And again, this is Connecting Returning Citizens to Employment Resources. Again, I'm Kimberly Gerlach. I work for the Pennsylvania Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. I am a program specialist. I've been with the state for a little over 7 years now. My current role is that I am the BJJS statewide specialist, and I also cover the adult reentry. So this is part of what I do on a daily basis. Randy?
And again, my name is Randy Loss. I used to work for the Pennsylvania VR Agency. I am currently with the State Mental Health Agency. I'm the Employment First Lead, and I'm working on all things that are employment related in regards to supported employment, supported education, that are dealing with persons with mental illness in the state of Pennsylvania. And by the way, the BJJS, I know Kimberly had mentioned it, that's the Bureau of Juvenile Justice Services, BJJS for short.
So our objectives today is that you're going to learn about the needed partners to successfully transition individuals from incarceration to the community. We're also going to teach you to identify common issues facing returning citizens as they return to their communities. We're also going to help you gain knowledge to find resources available for returning citizens so that they may experience success in employment. And we're also going to learn about different emerging models of reentry with several states. Next slide. So we're going to start off with a poll question. So what we're wanting to know is what percentage of your caseload has a criminal justice record. Is it 0 to 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, or 75 to 100% of your caseload has somebody with a criminal record?
And we'll take about another 15 to 20 seconds for folks to answer that. And not surprising, it's very similar. The numbers we're seeing similar to what we saw this morning with folks working with individuals in the juvenile justice system.
Mm-hmm. I do have somebody that just put in chat that their caseload is 100%.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it looks like about 70%, basically 70% of people indicated that it's 0 to 25%. And we feel that it's important, even if you're working with one individual in your caseload that has a criminal record, to be able to know what are resources that are available to these individuals. And just to take a step back really quick, in regards to the term we used in our objectives, we're calling them returning citizens. A lot of systems call them ex-offenders, ex-inmates, whatnot. We want to use positive language. You also want to use people first language. And Philadelphia actually started it, I think was the first large city that started using the term of returning citizen, because really we want to help the person return to the community, and we want to help them return to being a citizen, a part of society.
So we're going to go on to some definitions. We want to make sure that these are clearly defined and everybody is on the same page. And you'll see as we go through our presentation, we're going to keep coming back to these words. So there's a big difference between probation and parole. Probation is usually somebody that is a first-time offense. Minor offenses, they can get put on probation. It's usually court-ordered supervision instead of being sentenced to prison time. Where parole, that is somebody that's been incarcerated, usually in a state prison. Let's say they've gotten a sentence of a maximum of 5 years. Maybe they are getting out after 2.5 years on good behavior, whatever. They will serve the other 2.5 years of their sentence on parole with a parole agent. Your summary offenses, those are your most minor types of offenses. Those are usually non-traffic violations. Those can be things such as disorderly conduct, loitering, harassment, those kind of charges. Usually they may end up in a fine. They don't end up in jail time. Your infractions, those are the least serious types of crimes. These can result in fines. It's usually somebody breaking a law. There's usually no jail time associated with these either. But this can be something along the lines of trespassing, littering, disturbing the peace. Traffic tickets are included in here. So that's where the infractions fall. Your misdemeanors and your felonies, those are where you're going to start seeing your jail times. So a misdemeanor is usually a criminal offense that carries a jail time of less than a year. For most states, your state may be a little bit different, but in general terms, usually it is less than a year. And it's usually served in a county jail. Your felonies, and I will say, I know that some misdemeanors, it can be longer than that, and some misdemeanors could be in a state jail. Your felonies, that is going to be in a state prison or a federal prison, and usually those are more than a year. I know that here in PA, pretty much that the difference between, so if somebody's coming out of prison, if they come to me and they say that they served over 2 years, I automatically know that pretty much guaranteed they're coming out of a state prison, because here that's where the defining line is 24 months or more, and you're going to be in a state prison. If it's less than a 24-month sentence, you're going to be serving that in a county jail. So your felonies and your misdemeanors are all, both of those classes are broken down into classes. So a misdemeanor may be a misdemeanor class A, B, or C. where a felony will be broken down into classes of A, B, C, D, or E. And usually those classes in a felony are broken down according to the amount of time that you're going to be serving for your felony.
And one thing I want to add to that, thank you, Kimberly, is in order to kind of untangle that, unpack that, what is the person's criminal offense? It's really advantageous for you to talk to the probation or parole officer. They're more than willing to share information, and likely the information they can share you can't get from anywhere else because they're agents of the court. So they have access, ready access to this information. And again, individuals that are in a criminal justice system, their oral history might not be the best. So you might not know what is truly the case. They might indicate they don't know, but they do, but they're trying to possibly hide it or possibly find ways around what they have so that they can get things that they legally aren't able to access. So best thing to do is talk to your probation officer or your parole officer. They're going to be a great resource in regards to getting the down low on what the person's criminal record truly is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving on to the mission and vision statements, we're going from some very high level stuff, just like we did with the juvenile justice one in the morning. We did some national type stuff. We did some generalized terms. We're doing the very same thing for what's happening with the adult system. So we're going to talk about stuff at high level, stuff that many states have commonalities in terms of definitions. And every state, every agency, every department usually has what are called mission and vision statements. And the reason we're bringing these up is this is kind of your connector in terms of if you're trying to collaborate with partners, where can I start collaborating? What are the types of things that I can use to my advantage to be able to make those collaborations? And it starts at the foundational level of mission and vision statements. And the mission statement should guide the actions of the organization, spell out its overall goal. What do you do? Provide a path. What do we provide to get the person to those goals? And guide decision-making. How do we go about accomplishing these things? Vision statement, much narrower, future-oriented declaration of organization's purpose and aspirations. And I have here a couple mission and vision statements I pulled from the state of North Carolina. Again, trying to bring the funnel down. What we have listed here are the Department of Health and Human Services, where their state VR agency lies, and the Department of Public Safety, where the Department of Corrections, or excuse me, the Department of Corrections and the juvenile justice system lie within North Carolina. And I'm not going to read all this information, but I do want to mention the stuff that's highlighted, like the word collaboration in the mission statement of Human Services is listed in the Department of Public Safety's vision statement. So there's a connector there. There's a connector between the two partners in regards to they want to collaborate. That's great. Use it as a talking point to be able to make it to the next level, to be able to actually collaborate, to develop those relationships with your partners across the aisle in the criminal justice system. And what I have highlighted in green for the mission statement of the Department of Public Safety, I have developed progressively responsible behavior. A very similar terminology to the DHS, the Human Services vision statement, which I have highlighted, says promote well-being for all North Carolinians. So if you're helping a person develop responsible behavior, you're helping them promote their well-being. So again, there's connectors there. There are components that exist that are threads that you take to weave together, to weave that collaboration. So also another tool is what's called a Memorandum of Understanding. It's a very important tool that you can use. It's a critical collaboration tool that identifies roles and responsibilities. Funding could be a component, and we'll talk more about that just briefly. We had done that in our juvenile justice session in the morning. The state VR agency and the juvenile justice agency for the state collaborated together to develop a $3.1 million a year Memorandum of Understanding. And what's so important about the Memorandum of Understanding is it provides consistency. So if Kimberly is going to provide service A and me, Randy, are going to provide service B, whether it's to Sally or Harry or Tom or Jerry, we're providing the same service. And if we're in different departments or different agencies or agencies within different departments, we're making sure that whatever we do, we telegraph and we talk to the other person. So Kimberly's talking to me, I'm talking to her. Yes, I did this for Tom. You need to do that for Tom. Yes, I did this for Jerry. You need to do that for Jerry. A Memorandum of Understanding puts in writing what has to happen, when it has to happen, who's providing the service, and where it's going to happen. What's nice about memorandums of understanding too is that it usually can cover a state, cover agencies, and cover services. So if you're doing a service, say in Pittsburgh, PA, a person in Philadelphia, PA is getting the same services from the partner in the memorandum of understanding because it's in writing. The old saying is, if it's not written down, it's as if it didn't exist. This is a written document that helps collaborators collaborate. We'll talk more about a memorandum of understanding later in the presentation.
So we're going to go on to our second polling question. And we want to know, who do you think your potential partners are? Is it probation? Is it parole? Is it corrections, drug and alcohol counselors? Or is it district attorneys? Or is it all of the above? Randy, I've seen a couple of chats come in saying probation and parole. I've seen some come in saying all of the above.
We'll wait another 5 or so seconds to finish up this poll. Don't be shy, folks. Please feel free to jump in and cast your lot. Okay. Yes, the answer is all the above. That is correct. And I notice a lot of people didn't list the district attorney's office. And I say that while, yes, probation and parole are definitely important partners, as I mentioned a few moments ago, drug and alcohol counselors, yes, definitely important because substance abuse is a disability. Corrections officers, yes, what they're doing on the inside can have an effect on what happens on the outside. But I want to ask you folks to consider the district attorney's office. Even though many of you answered all the above, not many people put down district attorney's office. And the district attorney's office, they are the organization at the county level, at the state level, that's going to be determining what level of crime are we going to charge this person with in the court of law. So if you can work with the district attorney's office, the one who is setting up what is the crime, what is the charge that's going to be put against this person, and help them to understand the nature of disability, the extent of disability, the challenges of trauma. I'm not asking to go to the district attorney's office and ask for a pass, but helping them to understand what is going on in this person's life. Substance abuse, yeah, it's more than just a criminal charge, but it's something that has some disability-related aspects to it. It's mental health. The largest mental health organization or facilities in the country today are state prisons. Why is that? Because so many people that have mental health issues are ending up, they're offending laws of society, laws of the community. They're being charged, they're being put in prison. That shouldn't be. And how can we help to turn that tide? We need to talk to the district attorneys, make them familiar with who we are as an organization. Let them see that there may be alternatives that can be brought to the situation if VR can be involved. So it's very important that the district attorney's office be considered as well. Again, everybody's important in this conversation, but I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about North Carolina resources and potential collaborators. So again, we're trying to bring that funnel down from the state level, from national types of perspectives, from more generalist perspectives, to talk about what's going on at the state level. And then when we get to Pennsylvania, Kimberly and I are going to be talking about what's happening at the local level, where it's impacting the needs of the individuals. So with North Carolina, back in 2017, they developed a North Carolina Reentry Action Plan. And the premise behind it is to facilitate transition to society, identify resource gaps. And at the end of 2017, there were 14 reentry councils across the state of North Carolina, and they're receiving both state and federal funding. And also, too, there's 20 councils that are across North Carolina right now. So I think it's important that to find out what those reentry councils are doing right now in terms of how they're trying to identify resource gaps. They're probably looking for partners such as VR. How can they facilitate the transition to society? So again, transition, while it's something that's very relevant to students with disabilities that are transitioning from high school to work or high school to post-secondary school, it's also very relevant to people that are leaving the criminal justice system. Again, it's a different transition of sorts, but still many of the supports that they need are very similar to help them be successful. Now, the state reentry council partners in North Carolina are the Department of Justice, which makes sense, Office of the Courts, again, district attorneys, agents of the court, Health and Human Services, where VR lies in North Carolina, Commerce Division of Workforce Solutions, again, that makes sense, being able to get training, be able to get job opportunities in front of these individuals. The college system, again, a very critical component, because I know, especially working in the mental health field, education helps an individual lift themselves out of poverty. If they have a post-secondary certification, degree, something that is post-secondary, it's going to give them skills that are going to get them better pay. So that's very important to have them as a partner. And lastly, the Department of Transportation Division of Motor Vehicles, again, having an ID, having a driver's license, very critical partners to have in that conversation. So I'm going to see if this will work. Sorry, this is an experiment on you folks, but this is the map of North Carolina. And I'm going to click on the map, and it should open up the link, an active link, an interactive map. There we go. And if I click on Wake County, sorry, COVID-19's everywhere. I'm not going to click on the actual county because it's going to take me to the link, the capitalreentry.org link. But this is an interactive map of the 20 programs that have started across the state. And it provides points of contact. It provides different services that are being offered. It provides information that speaks to what is available for the returning citizen that can help them to return to the community safely and with success. So we're going to close this out.
So Randy, did you click on the map?
I did. Oh, did it? Nothing happened?
It did not. It didn't show. It didn't come up.
Is anything showing up at all?
It's just the PowerPoint page. I just want you to be aware.
Okay, thank you. I'll just close this out then. Hold on one second, please.
And while you're doing that, somebody did put in the chat, they did ask, does every state have a reentry council? They do, don't they?
Yes, every state should have a reentry council.
Maybe not every county.
Right, and I'm not sure. I do apologize if, can you see my screen? What can you see?
I can.
Is the PowerPoint up?
You need to start the slideshow.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, there we go, took us back.
There you go.
So, while that was an experiment, folks, I do apologize on that. But yes, every state has a reentry council. There is federal funding from the Department of Justice, and much of it started in 1974 with the Juvenile Justice Act. 1974, the federal government started issuing funds to states to develop these types of organizations, both at the state level and at the county level, to be able to devise ways to help individuals reenter society, whether they be juveniles or whether they be adults. It's morphed into, now it's both juveniles and adults. Again, back in 1974 when it first started, it was just primarily juveniles. But these, systems have seen the need, and as the program has evolved, they've seen that it's also needed for adults. So every state does have an organization that has federal funds to issue for grants to develop reentry programming for your state. So again, if you look at the presentation that we had done in the morning for juvenile justice, we spoke heavily on that. There are many different organizations in Pennsylvania. It's called the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, but that's not the same name across the board. It's going to be something different in each state. So you have to look, what is the juvenile justice grant funding organization? You're going to find your thread that's going to take you to these types of programs. So and again, this is the organization in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. In North Carolina, it's called the Governor's Crime Commission, GCC, and it's the Chief Criminal Justice Advisory Body to the Governor and the Secretary of Public Safety, Corrections. There's several committees. One is in regards to criminal justice improvement. One is in regards to crime victim services, and the third was in juvenile justice. And they have funding, as you can see, in 2018, they issued $100 million in grants across the state of North Carolina. Now, again, not every state has that much money for their programs, but every state does issue those types of things, those types of grants across their state for reentry. So Fair Chance Hiring Law, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, and I just want to see, I've been seeing in the chat that people are sharing reentry resources. So thank you everybody for sharing your reentry resources. That's awesome that you guys are connecting all these things. So the Fair Chance Hiring Law, this is North Carolina. It was actually their Senate Bill 562, and that was passed in May 8th of 2019. So basically what this did is it had automatic expungement for certain criminal charges. It has an expungement of nonviolent misdemeanor convictions after 7 years of good behavior. And then it has expungement of nonviolent felony after 10 years of good behavior. And this goes back to our definitions prior for misdemeanor and felonies. So when the charges are expunged, it's not available to the public, but it is still available to the district attorneys, and it can be considered by the courts for sentencing if a person reoffends.
Well, I think this, I just want to say, I think it's important in regards to having these types of laws. Now, not every state has these types of laws. I think in the wake of what we've seen over the past few weeks, states are going to be moving towards these types of laws. Because we want to be able to make sure that individuals aren't judged on their past behavior, but what they're currently doing. And a lot of what happens in laws today, they're very punitive in the adult system, so much so that it affects them not just while they're incarcerated, but because of their felony, because of the misdemeanor or whatever, the punitive nature of what they're charged with continues on. Business is not hiring because they have a felony. Business is not hiring because of misdemeanor, have a criminal record. So these are efforts that states are taking, which I'm excited to see. They're going to help turn the tide for these individuals.
And that's exactly why it's called second chance. It's giving them that second chance.
Right. Thank you.
I do want to say for the North Carolina, when I was doing the research for this, the nonviolent misdemeanor and the nonviolent felony, how your state defined that, it didn't make any changes to the definitions for those terms.
And again, what you're going to have to do for those folks that are on the webinar today, you're going to have to do a little research, look at what your states are doing in this regard. You know, second chance, fair chance, you know, use those kinds of definitions, Google them for your state to find out what your state is doing in regards to trying to undo very punitive laws. Like in Pennsylvania, if you have a felony, it either is taken from you after age 70 or after you've been dead for 7 years. So it's very punitive in Pennsylvania for a felony. So, I mean, you can get a pardon from the governor, you can work towards expungement, but both are very difficult and both cost a lot of money. So, and for folks that are in many cases in poverty, that's not a good direction for them to go. So these types of laws are very critical. So anything you can do to promote these types of laws in your state, I highly recommend.
And we're going to talk about PA's changes coming up.
Now, the Traditional Aftercare Network, TAN for short, again, this is something that's in North Carolina, but again, many states have these programs. It's an initiative from the Department of Public Safety within the state of North Carolina. And it's partnering and collaborating with community organizations. It trains individuals, agencies, and organizations to mentor inmates. Again, just like peer mentoring, which is a pre-ed service, it's something that's powerful no matter what age you are. You know, if you have some deficiencies in your social skills, having a mentor come alongside you and help develop those skills is critical. So having a program like this, in Pennsylvania, we have certified peer specialists. Now that's a Medicaid billable service. It's something that my agency, the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, promoted, and it's now a Medicaid billable service. This is something similar to that, but this is volunteers. But and we'll talk more about what Pennsylvania has done to develop a forensic peer, a Medicaid billable service, but also be able to provide peer services on the inside of the institutions. So again, these are some initiatives. These are some programs that they're value added. You know, you might only be a rock against an asteroid to help the trajectory move just ever so slightly, but the more movement you can make with the more rocks you can throw against that asteroid or that person's life, the more of the tangent or the trajectory can be changed towards positive, life-sustaining wages, being a part of their community, being a productive citizen. Now we're going to skip this slide right now. We're going to go to questions at the end. So just move on to Pennsylvania resources and collaborators.
So, you know, you've heard Randy and I talk about some things at a higher level, national level. So this, we're going to get into PA resources and collaborators.
What we have listed here, even though this is something that is from the Federal Department of Justice, it is the training arm of the Department of Justice. It's called the National Institute of Corrections. It's a resource that Pennsylvania tapped into back in 2010. It's a series of trainings. I was part of the first team that got trained. We went out of state to train. It was 3 weeks at the time when I did the training, but it's called the Offender Workforce Development Specialist, OWDS for short. And right now, in its current state, it's 2 weeks in person and a practicum for a total of 12 weeks. It's very intense, as Kimberly can tell you herself. She went through the training as well. Intense enough that you can gain 3 college credits. But what is really so powerful about this is it takes a team of professionals, you know, VR, probation officers, welfare office, county assistance offices, workforce folks, corrections folks, community civic organization staff, service providers come together locally. It's usually people that are like a 1 or 2 or 3 county region. They come together to develop a strategic plan and they implement that plan. And it's a very powerful thing because it's looking at many different perspectives of that individual's life, needs that need to be addressed to help them be successful. And I can think of one specific example of a team that developed a job fair in Reading, Pennsylvania. So what they did was they developed they called it at the time offender friendly, but it's now returning citizen job fair. And they put a couple caveats in it. They said to the individuals, if you want to participate in this, you have to go through some pre-coursework to make sure that we feel you're ready to go and make applications for jobs. So I call it the golden ticket, you know, just like Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. You had to have this ticket saying, yes, I took these 5 pre-courses in advance. I'm ready to interview today during this job fair. Also, too, some aspects of what they've done that made it very helpful is they had hairstylists there to cut people's hair. They had people doing mock interviews. They had people doing helping them brush up resumes at the job fair so that these people were actually ready. So they weren't just showing up to businesses, acting as employers to hire these folks, but it was a community effort to help these individuals put their lives back together. So again, I can't say enough about the Offender Workforce Development Specialist. It's a great training. You know, if it's something that you're interested in, you can definitely talk to Kimberly and myself afterwards about this. We're both trainers. We've done this before, and it's a very powerful course to help develop strategic plans to help people get employment with criminal records. Now, also too, there's a 2-day course called the Reentry Employment Specialist, RES for short. Again, it's a very condensed version of the OWDS, and we bring in specifically partners from different disciplines, different fields of study. Again, probation, corrections, VR, workforce, county assistance offices, welfare, community providers, to come together and have the conversation about what do we need to do as a team to start people thinking about what resources need to be in place to help this person be successful. And just an example of what Pennsylvania has done since 2010, we've trained hundreds of professionals. We've trained 150 individuals, professionals in the offender workforce development specialist. We trained over 500 individuals in the reentry employment specialist training. And why it's important that we're mentioning this is something that is foundational. It starts a conversation, but it helps you define what you need to do, helps you create the narrative, helps you develop a strategic plan, which then you can implement, and you can see, it helps to move the needle in the lives of individuals with criminal records. So, and in regards to the next item we have, I mentioned about the Memorandum of Understanding, excuse me. Pennsylvania OVR, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation and Department of Corrections, developed a Memorandum of Understanding in early 2011, 2012. And what it was designed to do was to obtain records, medical records, psychological records, educational records, vocational records in a consistent fashion, because we have 25 facilities, state facilities across Pennsylvania, 47,000 inmates, and 15 OVR field offices across Pennsylvania. So how do we make those connections? How do we get consistency in terms of what's coming to us when we make the request for documentation, and what the expectation is from DOC when we make that request? We had to put an MOU in place that listed everything out, Form A, Form B, Form C, that would consistently provide the information we needed to be able to determine eligibility much more quickly. But also, too, we had to find out who were the points of contact within the state correctional institutions, because, again, there's 16,000 people, staff, in these 25 facilities across Pennsylvania. How do we define who gets that information, the request, and sends the information out? So we had to define that as well. And again, it allowed VR to determine eligibility more quickly. Now, again, Kimberly, as you mentioned, when we were talking about this, it didn't necessarily give everything that a person needed for determining eligibility, but it was able to give some good starting information, correct?
Yeah. Well, the information that DOC does provide to us is the information they give us allows us to be able to determine that initial eligibility. We definitely would receive enough medical records and enough of their history that initial eligibility can be done. There may be things that you find out from that customer when you meet with them that you may need to get additional medical records, or you may need to get additional information, and you may need to update that eligibility at a later time. But part of that, like you said, was we through the MOU, we told them that we would determine their eligibility within 60 days, and those records definitely give us the ability to do that. So, yeah.
And one more component of what had to be in place to make the MOU successful, or make the MOU function, was we got permission from the Deputy Secretary of Corrections to be able to get records from Department of Corrections at no cost.
Yes.
In many cases, when, let's say, a lawyer is requesting medical records, or requesting records from the Department of Corrections, they charge them like 25 cents a page or even more. That was big for us to be able to get these records at no cost, because, again, rather than having to pay, potentially hundreds of dollars for this information, depending on how big the files were, it allowed us to put the money towards rehabilitation as opposed to documentation. So, again, those are components of what could be seen as successful memorandums of understanding in your state, if working with your Department of Corrections, getting information consistently so that you can determine eligibility more quickly, and you can get a plethora of information, their educational records, the vocation, if they started an HVAC program, but they need 3 or 4 modules to complete, at least you have the record of what modules that they complete, and that you can use that to connect to training programs in the community so that they can finish their HVAC certification as opposed to starting over. Another initiative that was done with the Department of Corrections, I mentioned earlier, we talked about the TAN, the volunteer training program, or volunteer mentoring program in North Carolina. This is a program that the state organization that provides grants to different rehabilitation programs for people with criminal records. The Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, they provided in 2011 a grant to develop forensic peers in state correctional institutions. So the initial grant was issued in 2011. It was to train 100 individuals, inmates. Sometimes some of them were lifers, meaning they were never going to get out, but they felt that it was going to be something that's going to help them help others who can be more successful in leaving the facilities. And again, the initial project was to train 100, but since that time, over 500 individuals have been trained. And for those that have gotten out, that have that certification, I can say there are many of them that are actually employed as forensic peer specialists in the community. They're getting a full-time position. I can think of one specifically out of Philadelphia, a great gentleman, powerful story, and his ability to have that certification to be able to help others and also make an income is a very, very powerful thing. And again, what it's doing is helping those with mental illness to be better prepared for the community. Also, too, another initiative that was done was the establishment of federal benefits MOU. So the Department of Corrections and the Department of Human Services developed in 2018 a Memorandum of Understanding so that when Johnny Smith is getting out of the state corrections facility, his benefits are expedited. They're turned on more quickly than what had been done in times past. So again, that's a Memorandum of Understanding. It provides consistency of what's going to happen for that individual when they're being released. And lastly, the Bureau of Community Corrections. That's another component of our State Department of Corrections. Kimberly had mentioned about individuals maybe serving 2.5 years of a 5-year sentence, being out under parole for the other 2.5 years. Now, some individuals don't have what are called home plans, meaning they burn their bridges, they don't have a place to go, and they need some place to stay. So the Bureau of Community Corrections, it's almost like a halfway house. These individuals go there, and they typically are there until that conditions of parole are done, that 2.5 years of the 5-year sentence is done. But what's nice about that is they have more freedoms. They're no longer considered inmates, but they're considered parolees. So they can work, they can find employment in the community. But the only challenge with that is if they're in, say, Philadelphia at a Bureau of Community Corrections facility, but they live in Pittsburgh, once they're done with their sentence, they've gotten to their 5-year sentence, and they are now released into their own recognizance. If they have a job in Philadelphia, but they're going back to Pittsburgh, it makes it very difficult in terms of issues with transferring the VR case. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So again, as you're getting more connected with your State Department of Corrections, or whatever they call it, in your state, the state prison, what are the challenges that people are facing as they're leaving the facilities, and how can you be mindful of that so you can plug in and help the individual be successful, help the system help the individual be successful. I'll turn it over to you, Kimberly. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. There we go.
Sorry, I was answering questions in the chat. So, in the Q&A, sorry, not in the chat. So things that are happening inside of the SDIs here in Pennsylvania. I've got listed here job fairs, pathways to success, and the transitional housing units and reentry services. So the job fairs here in Pennsylvania, we have about 25 state correctional facilities. And I'm not sure exactly what year it started, but every year they have been doing job fairs for the guys that are inside, that are incarcerated. So every single facility has one. They bring in providers, they bring in employers. So it provides them not only with job leads, but also for resources for when they re-enter into the community. So OVR is one of the people that's present there. Any other community agencies that want to attend, that are usually local and to that area. So that's one of the good things that's happening. Literally, Pennsylvania went on stay-at-home orders for the state on March 13th, and actually, I think it was the following week, these job fairs were about to start. Here in Pennsylvania, the state correctional facilities are not allowing in any outside visitors. So unfortunately, as of this year, none of these have been able to happen at this point in time. I don't know if we'll get back to the point by the end of the year whether any of these are going to happen this year or not. So we'll have to see on that. The pathways to success, the SCIs actually have a curriculum that they've developed. It's called Pathways to Success. Some of the areas that curriculum touches on is they do ONET interest profilers, or ONET interest in, assessments. They look at jobs that aren't available. There's a resource in a couple of slides that Randy and I are going to talk about as to where they get that information from. They teach them about understanding job opportunities, they teach them career pathways. They talk about the opportunities in the SCIs. They help them develop career plans. They introduce them to the PA Career Link, which is the one-stop shop. They work on resumes, cover letters, and teaching them how to fill out applications. They teach them interview skills. So this is a really good program to help get them prepared for employment when they're leaving and transitioning back into the community. A lot of these services will start happening in the transitional housing units, or THUs, or reentry services offices, which is the RSOs. Usually those guys that are in those programs are very, very close to being released, usually about 12 to 18 months out. And those are usually the guys that I would go in and work with. And we would start working on employment stuff while they're in one of those units. They have a team that's in place there. They actually have a parole agent that actually works in those units with those guys to help them with that transition and helping them get ready to go back out into the community. Anything else that you want to bring up, Randy, on that slide?
Well, I think it's important that, again, we look at, meaning folks that are on the call, on the conversation, what can you do to go into facilities and let them know about what services are available in the community? Because I think it's important that if there are individuals that are poised to be released from the facilities, they need to know what they're being released to. If there's just a bus ticket and a bag of clothes that they wore when they came in to the facility waiting for them, they're not going to be successful. But if they can know that there is a VR program, there are services in the community that can be offered to help a person be supported, and also to find out if they are under supervision, meaning have a parole officer, what can you do to connect to that parole officer so that you are on the same page systemically, philosophically, and they know what you can do for them and you know what they can do for you.
So these are some of the training programs that are currently being offered in the SCIs here in Pennsylvania. This is just a list of some of them. Some of the other programs that they offer is CAD, computer animated drawing. I can't remember what it stands for. Do you know, Randy, off the top of your head?
Computer aided drawing.
Yeah. Drafted drawing or drawing draft or something like that. Custodial maintenance, they offer electronics, fiber optics, horticulture, machine shop, masonry, optical assistant, restaurant trades, ward flex. And these credits that they get can be transferred to colleges. And I know, Randy, you have an interesting story on the horticulture from Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. Yes, the Philadelphia Horticultural Society went into the Philadelphia county prison. So this isn't state, this is county prison. And they developed a horticultural program with individuals that are incarcerated there. And they produce about 9,000 pounds of fresh vegetables a year. And they have about a 76% success rate of people getting jobs upon release. So they have those skills that they've learned. And 76% of the people that have gone through this program that get out are able to find a job quickly because of the skill sets they've learned.
So one of the other things that we've been working on is that some of these training programs that they have could possibly have the potential to be apprenticeship programs. So I have been in conversations with what we call ATO, is the apprenticeship training office here, to see what we can do about changing some of these programs and seeing if there's not a possible potential for them to become apprenticeship programs in the future. Next slide.
Sure. Sorry. I was trying. No, it's okay. I was trying to respond to a question.
So question number 3, what does ban the box mean? Does it mean removing cardboard boxes from prison common areas? Does it mean removing the criminal background question from employment applications? Does it mean prisons prohibiting boxing within the facility? Or does it mean that employers cannot ask criminal background questions during the interview? One of the panelists said 2, or one of the
I'm surprised no one answered. Well, someone answered 3. Awesome. Yeah. Window the 5 seconds.
Somebody else answered 4, and another 2.
Well, the correct answer is 2, removing the criminal background question from employment applications. So ban the box is a national movement, but it's not something that is in every state. It's not something that's in every town. Interesting enough, in Pennsylvania, for example, it's in Philadelphia. It was something that was put into codification in the Pittsburgh region, Allegheny County, but to this day, I don't know if it's actually implemented. So there are some challenges that municipalities, governments have with it in regards to implementing it, because it's I don't think it's as controversial as it used to be, but some states have gone, the whole state has gone ban the box. Many cities across the country have gone ban the box. If you look at banthebox.com, it's going to list all the areas. They keep an active list of all the areas, states, municipalities, counties that have gone to ban the box. That's a very important thing in regards to helping a person get in front of the employer, because if the employer asks that question, is you ever have a criminal record or committed a crime or whatever, depending on how it's asked, removing that from the application allows a person to get that opportunity to tell their story in front of the employer. So it's something that I think is very important, and it allows the individual to have that opportunity to speak on their behalf.
So
Back to you, Kimberly.
Yep. So some of the Pennsylvania laws that we have here is the Clean Slate Law, and then legal limitations document. That's not really a law, but earlier when I told you that the Pathways program and the SCIs, that there was a document that they use. It's this legal limitations document to determine somebody's criminal background and their employment opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then ban the box, which is what Randy was just talking about. So the Clean Slate Law, it's very similar to what we talked about earlier with North Carolina. In Pennsylvania, though, we began automatically sealing records June 28th of 2019. So statistically, by June 27th, which is in a couple of weeks from now, 2020, over 30 million cases will be sealed without the cost of filing petitions in the court. That's more than half of the charges in Pennsylvania's courts database. So that's the big thing with the Clean Slate Law, is it's an automatic process that these records are automatically being sealed and people aren't having to do anything to seal them. Previously, that's what you would have to do, is you had to petition the courts to request the expungement and the sealing of the records, where that's not happening anymore. So somebody prior to that date is still going to have to petition the courts and have it sealed. But it's helping with that second chance, like Randy was explaining. It's helping them have that opportunity at employment that they didn't have before, because now people can't see that. You know, like I said before, with the same thing with North Carolina, the only people that can see that is either a district attorney or the courts or the police officers. Like, they're the only ones that can have access to those records once they've been expunged. So when somebody's getting a background check for their employment, the employer is not going to be able to see these records. Here in PA, they do have to wait. So arrest records will be sealed after charges are dropped, and some conviction records will be sealed after 10 years. So it may take a little bit longer in the state of PA to get your records sealed than it does in North Carolina, because it seems like after 7 years, if it was a misdemeanor, you guys were able to get your records sealed, and for 10 years for a felony. So the legal limitations document, was done by Community Legal Services, or CLS. It's a legal advocacy group. They're based in Philadelphia. They work really, really hard to advocate for reentrants. They've actually created this document that looks at different careers, and it looks at the charges that could impede you from going into that career. I wouldn't say that it's all inclusive or like totally, like if you have one of those career or one of those charges, you're never going to get into this career, but it definitely addresses, like, these are the ones that are going to be, could possibly potentially be a barrier. So it's a really good document. Even though I know it's geared for PA and our criminal system and our laws and stuff, it could still be, for those of you in other states, it still could be a good starting point to like look and say, okay, well, you know, like Randy mentioned earlier, a doctor, like, so what could be some of the criminal charges that could impede them from becoming a doctor? And then researching your state to see if there's anything that you need to add or to delete from that document. But it could be a good starting point for you to start with. The link to that document is either in the resources or the reference pages at the end of the presentation.
It's in a resources page.
It's the resources page.
Yep.
So then the ban the box. I found this very interesting. So I did some research on ban the box. It actually started, I thought this was something very new and very recent, and it's not. Ban the box actually started in Hawaii in 1998. They were the first ones to ban the box. Did you know that, Randy?
I did not. I did not.
I learned something new too. So it's actually, as you were talking about, it is in Pittsburgh and it is in Philly. It is currently in 33 states and in over 150 major cities across the United States. So it's grown. It's, you know, in more and more cities. So I would suggest that you maybe do some research to find out if it is banned in your city or not. It's usually most of your major cities.
I'm sorry, I was going to jump to the next slide if that's...
Go ahead. That's fine.
Sure. And this is probably something that folks are very interested in regards to the inmate disability statistics. Our national statistics are 32% within prisons and 40% within jails have a disability. And of those populations of the 32%, 40%, 54% in prisons have co-occurring, 53% in jails are co-occurring. And this is an interesting statistic, and we'll talk briefly about a project that took place in Pennsylvania regarding brain injury. The CDC indicates that anywhere between 25 and 87% of inmates report having experienced a head injury or traumatic brain injury. And the reason they vary is because, one, how is it assessed? A lot of therapists are not trained, medical doctors are not trained to identify that type of thing amongst inmates. It's something that, again, depending on how well jails and prisons are doing the assessment to determine if the person has brain injury, that's why the wide variety of percentage across jails and prisons across Pennsylvania. And specifically dialing into North Carolina, in 2016-17, they saw that 71% of the people screened for for substance abuse, needed long-term treatment, and about 25,000 people with serious mental illness annually enter the jails. So again, the jails and prisons are the largest mental health providers in the country, because so many people with mental illness are going into the jail. So many people with substance use issues are going into the jail. So I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration in regards to, there are a lot of individuals, a high percentage, much higher than the general population, that have a disability that could benefit from VR services that are in corrections.
And Randy, I just want to say on that last slide, I saw some people asking about whether somebody being in prison was what qualified them for VR services, and it's not. This is what qualifies people for VR services. Right. is this, the TBIs, the drug and alcohol issues. That's what's going to qualify somebody for VR services. So go ahead, go to the next slide. So traumatic brain injury research, Pennsylvania has done a research study. We did a pilot. It was with SCI Graterford. The first time we did it, that prison facility has actually been closed. There was actually a report. It was in the 2018 Journal of Offender Rehabilitation. So anybody that wants to go read the report, I'll give you real quick. It was in volume 57 of the 2018, issue 8, pages 562 to 585. And it was in that Journal of Offender Rehabilitation. The research was actually published there. In that research, they looked at SCI Graterford. There was 163 guys that they looked at. And 75% of them that were screened reported an event or events that could have resulted in brain injury. So on an average, the report said that there was like 3.8 traumatic brain injury incidents per person, per individual. So it wasn't just one traumatic brain injury that most of these guys had, it was multiple traumatic brain injuries. And so when they're coming out, you're wondering why they can't, get to their appointments on time, why they're forgetting appointments. I mean, their whole frontal lobe and their executive functioning is impeded. And, so they needed some assistance. So in this research, what they actually did is they had a case manager that worked with these guys. And the neat thing about it is because that case manager was inside the prison before they left. That case manager stayed with them as they transitioned into the community. And when they went into the community, that case manager also assisted them in filling out the applications for OVR, maybe for medical assistance, whatever services that they needed. They were there for that support to be able to hold them and get them through this, because somebody with a traumatic brain injury, the OVR process is astronomical. I mean, so it was very hard for them to do, and they wouldn't follow through. They were missing appointments. So that was the nice thing about all of this. We are getting ready to do another study. Again, because of COVID-19, it's been postponed, but they are ready to do this with SCI Phoenix and SCI Chester.
And these are state prisons. That's what SCI basically is, a state prison.
Yes.
And actually, can I jump in to
Yeah, go
talk
ahead.
about the HRSA grants as well? What happened in the study? It was found out that 74% of the individuals that were in the study, of the 163 men, 74% of them indicated that they had acquired their brain injury prior to age 21. So with that, the project took this data and applied for 2 HRSA grants, federal grants, and they got 2 more grants to go into county juvenile development facilities, Bucks County, which is in the Philadelphia region, and Montgomery County, which is also in the Philadelphia region. And they were finding basically the same statistics. About 60%, just under 60% of individuals had acquired brain injury. Now, it wasn't necessarily a traumatic brain injury, but upon doing a little deeper dive, they found that about 45% of that 60% had traumatic brain injury. So they had enough concussions, enough hits, blows to the head that gave them traumatic brain injury. So again, an invisible disability that is very common in the prison system. And it's something that, again, these are individuals that need VR services to be able to be successful. And wanting to move on, we'll move to question 4. So Kimberly, you want to go ahead and ask the question?
So is it a good idea to have a list of businesses that hire people with criminal records to give to an individual with a criminal record? Yes or no? Somebody put in the chat, no.
And we'll go.
Well, they put no, they put 2, which is
Okay.
no.
Right. We'll go about another 5 seconds.
Somebody just put depends, no.
Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll. Okay, and the answer is yes and no, and I'll just quickly explain why. If you know the individual's background, if you know their record, if you know their disability, if you've worked with them enough to know that they're ready for the job search, then yes. But if they're not, then no. What I mean by that is I've heard many probation and parole officers saying, yeah, I have this list of 10 or 12 different employers that I tell the guys, and women, upon hitting the streets, they're now under my supervision, go and find a job. Here's 10 places to go. Know nothing about this person's ability to go to the job, know nothing about job matching, if this person is really going to be a good fit for these employers. So if you have good information, you have a good match, that this person that you're going to be sending to this business as the employer is going to be a good match for them, then the answer is yes. But I don't like folks just saying, hey, here's a list, go to these 10 employers. We don't want to be sending people that are not ready for the job search to these businesses. We don't want to burn bridges. So it's yes and no, but it's dependent upon how you're handling how this information is going to these individuals and how ready are these individuals for the job search. Kimberly?
So employer roundtables. This was something that was happening here in PA. We were actually having roundtable discussions. It was everybody from the Secretary of DOC and his staff, clear down to employers from the county, labor and industry. The secretary was present, OVRs there, politicians, reentry service providers, and workforce. So all of these people were around this table. We met at an employer that was reentry friendly. And we had discussions and kind of debunking those myths of, if I hire somebody that has a criminal history, they're going to steal from me, they're going to be bad, blah, blah, blah. And they actually had one of their employees that is had a criminal record, actually came in and talked to the employers that were there. So it just was really good conversations. And these are things that just need to be had, not only in PA and across the state, but in other states. Just having those conversations. Go ahead to the next slide.
Okay, thanks, Kimberly. And we'll just briefly, as we finish out our presentation, we'll just talk about some partners. We talked about the Department of Corrections and the state correctional institutions and what's been going on inside the state correctional institutions. We did touch on probation and parole, we want to talk to the PA Board of Probation and Parole. Now, they are primarily providing probation at the state level, or excuse me, parole at the state level, but they provide a lot of training and funding for probation officers across Pennsylvania. And they have some specific parole officers that are called ASCRAs for short. It's Assessment, Sanctioning, and Community Resource Agent. And basically, they're doing rehabilitation types of stuff with individuals as opposed to dealing with the criminogenic or the criminal record aspect of things, or helping individuals to be successful, helping them to work, having the lists that are appropriate because they know the person's ready for that job search. They have the Bureau of Community Corrections, as we mentioned earlier. They have reentry parole agents that are part of the offenders unit team. We talked about the RSO earlier. So again, as these individuals are in these RSOs, in the prisons, they're ready to get out, they're getting close to getting out. The parole agent is there to making that connection to the community to help connect them to the community once they've returned. And the probation parole officers are excellent community partners. As we mentioned earlier, they have access to criminal records, and they can develop sensible terms of supervision. Again, as being agents of the court, they can make changes to these terms of supervision. So it's not something that can't be changed, but also too, you can help you can work with them if they're familiar with what VR is and what VR can do. They can help to integrate your programming into what's happening with supervision, so that the person isn't just getting punitive conditions of supervision, but it's something that's helping them connect to success. And we'll talk about the PA Commission on Crime and Delinquency and the reentry coalitions. And as I mentioned earlier, every state has something similar to the PCCD. In Pennsylvania, it's called the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. It's a grant issuing state agency. It's equal to the governor's crime commission in North Carolina. Every state has one because it's a federally funded program. And the TBI project we talked about, where assessment of brain injury was done, and the forensic peer project, where peers were trained inside the institutions, the state correctional, the state prisons, that was funded by the PCCD. And they're looking for different types of projects to fund. So if you get plugged into them, and them being a grant issuing agency, there may be projects that you can develop together to be able to do something that's rehabilitative in nature and helping people to return to the community with the right kind of supports. Now, at the local level, there are PA reentry coalitions, and in North Carolina, they're called the reentry councils. In Pennsylvania, it's called the County Justice Advisory Boards, the CJABs. In North Carolina, it's called the Criminal Justice Advisory Board. These are local programs that are in every county. And I looked across different state titles, and they were called advisory boards, they were called commissions, they were called groups. It varies upon the state. So be on the lookout, do a BOLO, as it were, for your local level reentry coalitions, reentry councils, those organizations that are dedicated to helping people reenter successfully. Now, we'll take questions. So Heidi and Beth, if you want to give us some of the questions that were thrown our way, some deep level questions. I tried to answer a few of the questions, and I know Kimberly did as well, but there are probably many more questions that we weren't able to answer quickly.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Randy. This is Beth. Just so everyone knows, I'm having some tech issues, so sorry that my video is not up, and I hope my audio comes through okay. Just to revisit a couple of the questions that you already got to, there were a couple of people who had asked about expungement. Could you just real quick share with the group, how you go about getting that? Because you had answered those, but I had seen there were a couple, so I just wanted to make sure. In case others have that question as well.
Well, expungement, unfortunately, is an expensive option, and it can take some time. So my advice is, if you have somebody that says, hey, I want to get my record expunged before I start looking for work, I say no. Stop them right there. Be polite about it, but say, let's help you find a job first, gain an income, start getting your work history going, and then start working towards expungement. That's not something that they want to do. I mean, when individuals get out, they're raring to go. They could conditions of supervision. So they got someone, pushing them, the carrot and stick. There's a stick of the probation officer, parole officer. You don't want them to go down that path immediately. That's something they can do eventually, but one, it's expensive, and two, it takes time. So They don't have time because the probation officer, parole officer is saying, hey, we want you to get a job within X number of days, blah, blah, blah. So work on expungement after they've gotten their first job or after they've gotten themselves established with a career path. That's my advice. It can be done. It is expensive, and it doesn't always come out with, your records live forever on the internet. So it's something that you have to take care with. It's just like the list of offender-friendly employers. You have to take care. You have to look at each person's individual case. Oops.
Thanks, Randy. And then the next question I have is one that also kind of came up that you had already answered, and that one was talking about a more specific situation. But the question's asking for suggestions for working with clients who have violent offender convictions.
Kimberly, you want to try that, or do you want me to jump in?
Say that again.
Someone with a violent criminal record. How do you help somebody with a violent criminal record?
I think it would be a matter of looking at, what is that violent crime? Unfortunately, that is one of the harder ones to place. And so is sex offenders. Those are probably the two most difficult criminal histories to work with. You just need to make those relationships with the employers in your area to find out who you're definitely not going to want to put them, in certain jobs. Randy, do you have
Well, I was going to say warehouses.
Yeah.
Warehouses are good businesses as a starting point to help them develop a work history. They're away from people. They're away from a variety of different temptations and whatnot. So warehouse jobs are probably a good starting point for persons with those records. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter what kind of training they may have had, what kind of formalized training they had. Because of the nature of their crime, it can be very difficult for them to find employment. And indeed, someone asked a question, is self-employment an option for some folks? And I would say self-employment is something that's I would strongly consider as well, because it takes a person with a criminal record probably about 8 to 10 years to really get to a life-sustaining wage simply because of their record. So I would recommend, if the person has the capability to develop a self-employment plan and it's something that seems viable, that might be a good option too, because even if you have a felony, you can have your own business. You're the boss. So that's possibly a consideration as well. Again, I wouldn't say everybody go that route, but self-employment for a person with a high skill set might be an option for them. If they show the business, have the business sense, it could be an option for them.
Randy, do you want to advance that last slide? Sure. Contact information is up there.
We'll still take questions, but we wanted to put this information up in case you wanted to reach out to us at a later date. I believe it was shown in the chat box too at the beginning. But Beth, what other questions are there out there?
So the next one comes from George. He's asking, earlier you mentioned working with the probation officer for the prologue to get a full picture of the offender situation. How do you handle issues of confidentiality in that situation?
Well, usually probation and parole officers don't have to worry about the same level of confidentiality as maybe you or I would have to. But again, you want to make sure that you're getting full permission from the individual you're working with and say, in order for me to get this information, I really need to talk to your probation and parole officer. So you need to get permission, I would say, from the VR side of things. You need to get permission from the individual. So I wouldn't proceed until you've gotten that in writing. Just like a release of information for any other situation, you're going to want to do the same thing. Kimberly, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Is just those releases of information. I think as long as you're upfront and upfront with the customer as to what you need and why you need it. And you have the release signed. It's kind of not confidential at that point in time because they've given you permission to get it.
What other questions do we have?
The next one comes from Kathleen. It says, when you say expungement is not visible to public, What about when background checks are done on the state level?
Well, and I'm not sure, Kimberly, you mentioned about the fair hiring law from North Carolina. I think that's what she's referring to. And I would say that when records are expunged, as I mentioned a few moments ago, the information unfortunately lives forever on the internet. So again, it takes making sure that the individual is aware that this stuff might happen, that, as a employer does a background check, even if they're looking for an arrest record, if it shows up that a person has an arrest record, that might be something that gets the person tossed from being considered. It may have never turned into conviction, but it was something that shows up in the system in the background check. So again, I think you have to take care in regards to what exactly is the person asking to be done. Now, expungement, of course, is to remove the record, but even juvenile justice records are quote unquote expunged when a person leaves the system. If they don't get an adult charge and they leave the juvenile justice system, that record is expunged. But with the advent of technology, and background checks, that stuff unfortunately lives on forever. So it's not a perfect system, and you have to help your individual that you're working with be aware that there may be ghosts that exist in the system that pop up. So I think, one, you have to help the individual. You yourself need to know what the individual's record is. That's why talking to a probation officer or parole officer is very helpful. But two, they need to be educated on what their record is so they can say, no, this has been expunged, just no longer exists. This information that you have, it shouldn't exist because it was been expunged. I've shown my good behavior. I've done these things. I have a family. I've gone back to school, blah, blah, blah. So it's as much what the individual is doing and how they're putting themselves out there, how they're promoting themselves to advocate on what they've done and why that information isn't false. So again, there are those barriers that do exist. And the reason I'm talking so much about it is because expungement sounds like a great idea. It is a good idea, but it's expensive. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to remove everything that's out on the internet.
Thanks, Randy. The next question comes from Richard, and it's asking, for states where VR is operating under an order of selection, how has that impacted serving re-entering citizens with disabilities?
I'll throw that one to you, Kimberly.
Say it again. I'm sorry. I'm trying to multitask.
Order of
That's
selection.
okay.
How's the order of selection affected providing services to people with criminal records?
So Pennsylvania is one of the few states that we are on a closed order of selection. So basically they have to apply for services. They will sit on the wait list. Their eligibility can be determined, but they will be sitting on a wait list until we open up and they can come through. And that's based on the date of their application.
Thanks, Kimberly. The next one, give me 1 second here. Okay, the next one comes from Charles. It says, the population I served in Florida, I learned there are a very limited amount of resources available for SOs. Even the services intended for reintegration could not serve these individuals. If I may, is Florida the only state that sees this lack of services for this population?
Not knowing how all 50 states and the territories as well are operating, I would say probably not.
I don't think so either.
I think that you're going to find those pockets of lack of resources, shall we say, across the country. And just because Pennsylvania we're talking about what we've been doing in Pennsylvania, believe me, that doesn't mean that we have a plethora of resources. We don't. We've just looked at what can we do just to move the needle a little bit in regards to making those connections. Like, for example, even if you could get something with the Department of Corrections to get the records at no cost, copied and sent at no cost. Those are the little kinds of things that can help make change. It's not a lot, but it's something. And that's kind of where we started, and again, I started working with Department of Corrections probably in 2009, 2010, and it took many years. I mean, it wasn't until I've left the position, Kimberly actually replaced me in the state VR agency, and it took a full 7 years for the juvenile justice one to MOU to go into place, and a lot of what we started back in the early 2010s didn't really come to fruition until now. So it's like making wine. It's the best way I can describe it. You know what you want to do, you know what the intention is, but don't be surprised that it's going to take some time to get to the point where it's actually making something happen.
Yeah, and just to follow up on Charles's question, we have folks on this webinar from all around the country. So if other people want to chime in the chat about what resources are available in your state for re-entering sex offenders, if you have resources you can share, or if you're one of those states that's experiencing a gap, feel free to chime in on the chat and kind of let us know where you're at as well, because we want to share resources across different lines if we can. I know that's not always possible, but feel free to chime in on the chat.
Well, and I do apologize. I didn't realize what the acronym SO meant. So sexual offender, yes, that is a very challenging population to work with. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that, again, warehouse positions, possibly self-employment, someplace where the person's going to be away from the public, that's likely the most ideal position that's going to bear some fruit for this person. It's the nature of the crime that they've committed, unfortunately.
The next question comes from Matthew. It's asking, when a returning citizen is applying for a position with vulnerable populations, if the box regarding criminal background is removed, how does an employer protect the client who is a member of a vulnerable population?
So my view on it's ban the box. So it's only to ban the box on the application. So at the time that the conditional offer is done, that's when the person needs to be disclosing their criminal history. It does not eliminate them disclosing that information. And maybe that's not the most appropriate job for that person. If they have that kind of a history, and there's a vulnerable person there, maybe the employer needs to, because again, it's a conditional job offer. And once that's known, maybe they put him somewhere else in the company, that he wouldn't be exposed to that person. Maybe there's something that they can do to look at where they don't cross paths, working on separate shifts, something like that. It doesn't mean that they can't offer him the job, but those are things that the individual just needs to disclose. And at the point of a conditional job offer, that's when those things need to be discussed, because that's what the purpose of Ban the Box was, is to get that interview so that they could actually get the conditional job offer.
Thanks, Kimberly. The next question is from Stephanie. It's asking, what is the best way to ask an employer if they're CORI/SORI friendly?
You're talking about re-entry friendly?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not super familiar with those acronyms, so I'm
assuming it's re-entry or so to me, just ask the question, and I've done it, are you opposed to hiring somebody that has a criminal record? And I mean, I've asked employers, and usually I don't get turned down, or a lot of times it's, well, we can hire anything, but we may not be able to hire somebody that has a assault charge, or, depending, retail, they can't hire somebody that's got retail theft. So, it doesn't preclude everything, but it may preclude certain offenses. So I think it's just, you ask the question.
Well, I think too, it's like, you could ask the question of the business, saying, I have the perfect person for you, but they have, if I had a perfect person for you, but they had a criminal record, would you be willing to hire them? So I think, depending upon what the need is. I think before the pandemic, businesses were clamoring for people. After the pandemic, I don't know what's going to be happening, so it should be interesting to see. But hopefully a year from now, we're back to the situation where people are clamoring for employees. So it might be an easier ask to make at that time, but we'll have to see.
Thanks to both you, Randy, and Kimberly as well. We had a lot of questions, so thanks to everybody who participated and submitted their questions. We obviously didn't get to all of them, so we'll be sending them along to both of you so that you can answer them, and we'll post them along with the webinar. So if we didn't get to your question, I apologize, but it will get answered and will be posted in the archive webinar section. Also, in these last couple minutes of the webinar here, while we're still live, feel free to plug in a few more questions to Q&A if they've popped up for you. I just want to do a couple quick housekeeping things. If you're in need of CRC for today's webcast, Heidi's been adding links to the chat box on the steps to request the CRC. It can also be found on our webcast page within our website at projecte3.com. Additionally, if you're registered for this webcast, you'll receive an email tomorrow with these instructions. If you have any questions at all about CRCs or that process, please direct those to projecte3tc@gmail.com. Final reminder for today, the next webinar in the Project E3 webcast series is on June 18th, and that is the final webinar in the Trauma-Informed Care series, and that is creating a trauma-informed environment. So we hope to see you at future webinars, and thanks again to Randy and Kimberly. This was a really great webinar, and we hope you're able to join us either for this session or both this one and the one in the morning. But any questions, feel free to reach out. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you, folks.